All right, folks. Now it's time for the post show, and this is where we usually get extra geeky and we talk about specs and things like that. But the last few episodes, we've been just having a casual conversation in the post show, and I've kind of been enjoying it. So we're going to stick with that same theme and just talk about the current state of VR and AR right now, and um, just I'm just going to throw a couple of questions out there, and we'll talk them through. And the first one is, what do you think about the current state of VR right now? VR and AR and these glasses and things like that. Great.
I'm excited for what I think it could do, how it could transform. If I think about how the internet and remote technologies broke down work barriers,
Mm-hmm.
right? And to be able to work in a job across the world and not leave, that kind of stuff, and how the
Right.
internet has opened that kind of stuff, and then mobile to be able to be in touch all the time. I'm excited to see what VR and AR can do for transforming our world and
Right.
helping us experience new things. And, if I think about one of the uses I would love to have when there's 3 feet of snow outside is to be able to put on a pair of goggles and do the Tour de France track, or
Right.
ride my
Right.
bike through the Alps while I'm on the stationary bike, and have it change based on the elevation, and and all that kind of stuff. That would be super super cool. So
Mm-hmm.
that's the positive side of this. What I'm want to keep my eye on is what's happened with social media, especially to people that grew up all the time on social media, and the impact
Right.
it's had on mental health, and your perception of your worth and your value, and
Mm-hmm.
keeping up with the Joneses and all that kind of stuff. Because what that is that's a disconnect from reality, right? And a disconnect from the person to person interaction. One of the reasons I look forward to this podcast is you and I talking for a couple hours,
Right.
because I don't get a lot of interaction with people outside my family here, just because of I work from home. I never leave my house. I mean, my truck can stay in the garage for a week at a time. So
Right.
I worry about more isolation, more mental health issues as people continue to check out. And then when they do have to come back to reality, it's not as cool
I
as
know
where
it's
they
it's
were, right?
lame and yeah, yeah, you're right. You're right.
Yeah.
So,
So those are the two things that I'll be curious to see what happens. I know that's not the actual tech itself. It's
mhm.
more the cultural and social impacts that I would like that I'm keeping an eye on. But that's kind of where I stand right now.
Yeah, yeah, and I didn't think about that as I was writing my my what I think about it is more practical, but yeah, I think people isolating themselves or they just spend so many hours and so much time in this that when they come out, they don't know how to readjust to the real world, right? They don't know how to speak to people. They don't know how to how to just conduct themselves in real environments and or still conducting themselves as if they're still in a virtual environment with no
Yeah.
consequences and no things like that. So no, I that is really something to think about moving forward. And um
Yeah.
we know that there's going to be bad uses for this
Yeah,
this
I
type
mean,
of stuff, just
all
like
of
with
the negative
everything.
stuff that is in real life and that's on
Right.
the internet it's already started to happen
Right.
in
Right.
VR and with AI. I mean, those are the two technologies right now that I think are going to dominate the conversation. But,
Mhm.
maybe the simplest example, I would encourage folks to think about this. Um, if it wasn't $3,500, Karen and I could both get one of these. We watched Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning hit streaming. So we
Mhm.
watched that the other night and it was great. We watched it together. We talked to each other, we joke around about it. And then, but I think about if we wanted to watch it in VR
Mhm.
on Apple's Vision Pro, well, two of us sitting on the couch with a headset on is not the same as watching the movie together, right?
Right.
And so I would encourage folks to think about that. Our relationships that we have, and I said this on the Leaders List podcast, the most important thing we have in our lives are relationships. And if any technology, including AR or VR, harms those relationships or takes away from those relationships or causes isolation and those kinds of things, then we've got to watch it. So don't want to harp on this because I absolutely believe there's amazing things that are going to happen with this. But just like getting addicted to video games or getting addicted to
Right.
social media, I can see people getting addicted to this augmented reality, and you end up with things like the movie Real Player One, right, where the only place people could go was into the Oasis, and
Right.
that kind of stuff. And that's not the future any of us want to have. So I think we need to keep our eye on that. Not trying to
Right.
be a
Right.
doomsdayer or
No,
anything
no,
like
no.
that.
But you're right. You're right. And also, you mentioned earlier about people's self-image and their self-worth and things like that. I just can see this future leaning to. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm touching my mic again. But I can see this future heading to where someone's self-esteem and their self-worth is so low that they only feel like they're worth anything in that
Yeah.
virtual environment. They don't want people to look at them without their glasses on. They don't want people to interact with them without their glasses on. And they, you know, basically isolate themselves from the world, and they're only who they really want to be inside. And we see bits of that now with some of these massive online, role playing games, right? They're only who they are when they're that wizard mage or something like that, and they're slaying dragons and stuff like that. But in the real world, they're just antisocial and just a person who can't, navigate um, our reality. But they're the
Yeah.
king of Avalon. You know what I mean? And in their online world. So I just don't want to see that, which I know we are. There's going to be a bit of that, and hopefully that's going to be, you know, after dealing with generations of social media and technology addictions and stuff like that. Hopefully, as a society, we'll be more equipped to be able to deal with stuff like that when it comes along.
Yeah. I mean, a couple of things, not to keep going on and on about this, but in the
No, no,
Oasis,
this is the post show.
the first thing that the players did when they took over the Oasis was close it 2 days a week. Completely close it.
Hmm.
And they said that's because we need the interaction in the real world, and that's absolutely true. And
Right,
then the other problem that I see that people need to think about is, do I give up on becoming the person or achieving my goals in the real world because they're so much easier to achieve in the virtual
right.
world, right? I mean, I'm playing NBA 2K, and Jason laughed because I had some technical issues and I was going to be really upset if I
I'm
had to
glad. Yeah, I'm
start
glad
over,
everything worked out.
right? I know I'll never be a professional basketball player. So I can, go play basketball and feel like I'm the best point guard in the NBA
Right,
virtually. But if I am a great leader or people look up to me or those kinds of things in the virtual world, and I'm a recluse and I don't deal with people, or I don't ever work on those skills that are needed to become the kind of person that I want to be in the real world, then that's a problem too, because our goal with this podcast is helping people get more out of their life. My goal with the other podcast was helping people live up to their potential, and
yeah,
these two things are going to collide if you just think I'm just going to do the virtual world because it's so much easier and I can just hit reset, or I can just go pay for extra currency, or whatever
right,
the case may be, other than and that prevents us from going through the journey to get to who we really could be and to get the
right,
most out of our real lives.
right. So again, my complaint about the current state is more practical. And my complaint about VR and AR is the same complaint I have about everything that's mobile technology. And that's the technology improves at light speed, right? I know we said VR has been around for years, but the technology has improved so fast, but the battery technology doesn't, right? We're still basically using the same batteries that we used in the 90s, right? And it's up to companies like Intel and Apple that kind of optimize the hardware to not drain the battery so much, because these are still the same batteries. So until battery life improves, or the way we charge and we keep these devices charged, some new technology comes along, I don't really see most people using this, right? Because
Yeah.
now you buy even the X Real, I believe one of the reviews I said was like 4 or 5 hours, which is good for entertainment or recreation use or something like that when you come home. But if you're going to be using this thing, like I mentioned at CES, one of the car manufacturers basically syncs with the X-Real glasses while you're driving and gives you a heads-up display. If you want to see people out in the wild, so to speak, in the public, using these things for navigation, or uh, delivery drivers using them for their job while they're delivering packages and stuff like that, cooks working with the menu, or orders and stuff work, popping up as they're preparing meals and stuff. If you really want to see this technology be used in our everyday lives, battery life is going to have to improve on these things.
Yeah.
It just is. And that's my main complaint about it. Some of the more powerful VR headsets and AR headsets, they're wired, they're tethered, right? You're tethered to some kind of unit. You have a wire running down your back, or like when I go to the VR meetings, they have it running up. They have like those zip cords holding the wires up out of your
Right.
way, so you can navigate around the room without tripping over cords and stuff. But to get that type of power, you're
Yeah.
wired. You're wired.
Well,
So battery has to improve to be able to move this technology along.
and Apple's got an external battery, which most
Right?
of the headsets don't, and theirs is still heavier than a lot of headsets, even without
Yep.
the battery, as compared to those that have it. The problem is that battery is only 2.5 hours, and so that's not
Yeah.
even most movies
Yep.
nowadays, because most of them are
Mhm.
going to run 2 hours and 45 minutes or something like that. And right
Yep.
now, there's no soft shutdown. You've got 30 seconds to unplug and plug into a second battery, and a spare battery is $200.
Right.
But so you're going to have to be plugged in. And, the other use case, if you're going to want to do this on a flight, you know, any flight
Right.
you're really going to want to use this on is probably going to be longer than 2.5 hours. So, yeah, I agree with you. The battery technology needs to improve. We need to be able to get
Yeah.
more energy out of smaller packages, more efficient energy, and not just software. There's got to be something from a hardware standpoint. And
Right.
I mean, even
They
the
have to be
RV
better
and
batteries.
yeah, the RV industry is shifting away from lead acid batteries like you have in your car to lithium.
Yes.
But you're still talking big batteries,
Yeah.
right? And then
Yeah.
it has its trade-offs. And so yeah, energy I think is going to be if you can come up with a better battery system, yeah, I think you could do really well. So
Right. Right. You think about the microchip from 1980 to, not even 1980. Think about microchips in the 90s until now, how that's improved, like almost like alien technology, almost like magic, um, from just that 30 or 40 years. But yeah, battery technology
yeah,
is not improved.
yeah. I mean, you watch, and I don't know why I can't think of the movie off the top of my head right now, but you watch where NASA gets their first supercomputer, and it takes
Mhm.
up a whole
The
room.
whole room, yeah.
Yeah, and
Right.
my
Yeah.
smartphone sitting over here fits in my pocket and is like what, 10, 20,
Yep.
50 times more powerful than that supercomputer was.
Right. I believe it was
So,
the Ramac, the whole room computer. I believe it was a Ramac or something like that.
yeah. So,
So my next question is, we kind of answered this with the first question, is, do you really see it catching on? Right.
yeah.
And what I mean by this is, again, the battery life is a roadblock for this technology, for this industry. Um, but to really see this catching on, you have to understand, and we talked about this before with other devices, is removing the phone from the center of your tech ecosystem, right? And for so many people, now don't get me wrong, 30 years ago, longer, no one even saw the phone being the center of your tech ecosystem. So we see it in real time that something new can come along, and that'll be the main device that you use. But now that we see things like the watch can easily be the center of your tech ecosystem, right? Without a phone, manufacturers, Samsung, Apple, they're trying to really keep us tied to that phone. You know what I mean? They've offered things where you can set up the watch and stuff like that without it. But maybe in about 5 or 6 years, you'll be able to buy a smartwatch, and that'll be just as powerful
Yeah.
as the current state of phones, and we can remove the phone from the center of your universe. So if you can understand things like that, that the phone is not going to always be the end all be all of your tech ecosystem, right? It's not going to be the center. Maybe the watch will be the center, or maybe it'll be a combination between glasses and a watch and some other device that you wear that's either a battery or, um, you know, the main processing power. And it's not
Yeah.
necessarily a wearable, it's something you stick in your pocket and it's wirelessly charging the device or wirelessly charging and doing all of the processing power and the cellular connections and stuff like that. And it's just a black screen or a black box that you keep in your pocket, but the watch is your screen interface, or the glasses are projecting a screen interface for you to do something like that. So if you can understand that the phone is not going to be the center of the universe, then I can really see this catching on. You know what I mean? In the next,
Yeah.
you know, 5 to 10, 15 years or so, like that. What do you think?
Well, I think it's going to catch on, and I think if m- my conversation, my wish list is going to head into this territory. So maybe I'll hold that until we get to that. But yeah, I think
Okay.
this is going to catch on. I think it's going to be transformational again,
Right.
for better and for worse. So I definitely think it's going to catch on.
Okay. So, and again, I know we kind of answered that with with the first question. So the last question is, what do you want to see from the future for these devices? And mine is simple. I want to see higher tech and lower prices, right?
Yeah.
So I'll just finish it with that. That's what everybody wants from everything, right? I basically want the Vision Pro as it is now for $1,500. You know what I mean? And I may have to wait for the Vision Pro 2 or the
Yeah.
Vision Pro Lite. You know what I mean? That'll be second or third generation of this current device. And we talked about why this price is so high. It's in the hands of the people that need it, not for necessarily folks that want to play around with it. But yeah,
Yeah.
I want all of that tech and a lower price tag.
Well, and so, I mean, you shared that Microsoft video, and I think there was a BlackBerry one that was similar that came out
Right.
even earlier than that. And that was going to be you kind of stole my thunder on that particular one. But
Right.
I don't think I don't think maybe the phone, yes, but I think the concept of I have a core computing device.
Right.
And that core computing device sits in my pocket or whatever the case may be. It's probably about the size of a phone,
Hmm.
and that's what I carry around with me.
Yeah.
So if it could be on my wrist, that would be awesome. If it's in my pocket, that's okay too. But the idea would be that um, I walk in and I set it on my desk, and then that projects up, and now I
Right.
can interact. So all
Right.
of my computing and everything is on that one thing, but then I have unlimited numbers of places where I can do this. And that's kind of what that Microsoft video was, right? And
Right.
so
Just a bunch of
if
slivers of glass. Yep.
yeah, if I want to put it on a wall somewhere, or a projection screen, or on a desk, or you know, have the holographic display coming from my watch, or whatever the case may be,
Hmm.
that's where I really want this stuff to go. Now, I wear glasses, right? And
Yes.
so I like the concept of glasses. I hope that they get to the point where the devices can handle my prescription, not have to have special inserts, because if the devices could handle my prescription, then they could continually adjust, right? And
Right.
they could be shared with other people. If you have to do prescription versions or prescription inserts and stuff like that, it becomes a little more complicated. So um, that's kind of what I want, and I like the idea. I don't know if you've ever watched the show The Good Doctor, um,
No.
but it's a medical show. But the doctor that's in it has some mental challenges. But what he's really good at, and they show this, is that when he's assessing a patient, like in the pilot, a boy has glass go into his chest
Mm.
in the in an airport, and what he's able to do is visualize the whole circulatory system in the kid's chest and know which vessels are being cut off and stuff like that. And so, if I think about that kind of an approach, and it just, the way they showed on screen is it's just this ethereal thing up there, and he's seeing it in his brain, and those kinds of things. So that's where I would like to see this go. I'd like to have that one computing device that covers everything I've got on my desk right now. Wyatt was in here earlier, and he's like, I didn't realize how intricate your setup was. And I was like, yeah, there's a
Right.
lot. But I'd like to have that one computing device, and then I just have the ways to present and interact with that information that differ depending on where I am and what I'm
Right.
doing and that kind of stuff. That's where I want to see this stuff go. The entertainment stuff is fine. but I'm still at that point in my life where I need productivity. And
Yes.
so I want to address that first. And then if it just so happens that I can watch a 3D movie on some of this stuff too, then that's great. But at least for me right now, the more practical uses are
Yep.
higher on my priority list.
Yep. Yep. And we need those devices that are kind of dual purpose, right? We're at an age now, with the families and the grandkids and all that. It's hard to buy devices that are recreational or just entertainment for just us, right? If we're the only ones that can use it and the family can't use it, and no one else can share it because it's a prescription lens or something, um,
Yeah.
it becomes harder for folks like us to pull the trigger, right? And we love technology. This is gadgets for families, right? We we like to share technology with our families and stuff. So when it comes down to only I can use this, it's only made for me, it only fits me, and I'm the only one that can get any entertainment out of it, then it becomes harder to justify
Yeah.
those types of purchases for guys like us. So, but if we can work on it and get our jobs done and our hobbies done and still watch Star Wars on Tatooine, then yeah,
Yeah.
it becomes an easier choice.
And this stuff is more expensive. I mean, we've got 4 Nintendo Switches in the
Yeah.
family, right? Between myself and my kids. Actually 5, because my other daughter has one too. And in some cases that means we have 3 or 4 copies of games and
Yes.
all this kind of stuff. So some of those types of things have got to improve, or it just doesn't hit as a
Yeah.
priority for
Yeah.
me. Because I mean, like buying one of these for every person in my house just so we can do something is just unrealistic, right? But
Yeah.
if I was already buying a phone and now I just needed to buy this centralized computing device that then does all this other stuff, and then
Hmm.
the house or the trailer is equipped to be the screens and the interactions and all that kind of stuff, but it's just coming from my computing device versus so and so's, then that's great. So I think it'll be interesting. I think if I think about movies like Minority Report or like the
Right.
Mission Impossible with the glasses and that kind of stuff, and then these types of videos, and even Star Trek, right? I mean, send it to my ready room, and all of a sudden
Yeah.
it pops up on the desk, or they've just got the super thin tablets. None of the computing power is in that stuff. It's all sitting in the core of the enterprise, right?
Right.
So I think our reality is starting to merge with that sci-fi reality that we've already been
Yes.
suited in. And so I want that from a tech standpoint, but I do believe we need to be conscious of the cultural and social impacts of it.
Well, I think that's a good way to end it. What do you think? How are we on
Yeah,
time?
I think we're good. We went just over an hour, even including the post show. So yay.
Okay. Well, so I did have one more thing. And I said several times before that the Vision Pro is just for the pros and the people that need it right now, right? The developers, um the people who are going to be the influencers, things like that, right? At the end of that demo that I watched, the lady was doing it was like, oh, thanks, and there's going to be more to come, and we're excited, blah blah blah, the whole thing. And she mentioned there are currently thousands of apps available for the Vision Pro. So I'm wondering, and that kind of stuck with me. I'm like, well, I know people already developed for it, right? I know people are
Huh?
still developing for it. The big companies and stuff, they already had their hands on it. We know Disney and the whole Disney Plus team, they have it and they're working on their things and a lot of stuff behind the scenes, but thousands of apps. So
It's
I'm wondering,
That's misleading, Jason.
right? It's the
That's
iPhone apps.
No, it's the developers that have allowed their iPad app
Okay.
to run in
Okay.
Vision Pro. So it's checking the box. But there are big developers like Netflix and Spotify,
Right.
and maybe it's not Spotify, but anyway, Netflix was a huge one that have just said, no, you're just going to have to use a browser
Right.
in order to do
Right.
it. And so I think that's misleading. But I'm glad you brought this up, because one of the things that's happening, at least to me right now, is that I was super excited when it was first announced. And then when
Hmm.
I started thinking about the price and the restrictions, and then thinking that it would take, there'd be a waiting list 8 months long and all those kinds of things, that kind of tempered my excitement for this. Excuse me. Cut that
Right.
cough. Cut that cough. But what's happening now, and I think this is going to continue to happen, is as I watch the reviews and I see how people use it, especially if I can get, because most of the demo stuff they've done is around entertainment. If I
Right.
start to see real use cases where somebody's got the Microsoft Office
Hmm.
suite up and running, which is what I use in my consulting business, or if we start to see that we could record this podcast and that kind of stuff, I think that Apple reality distortion field is going to
Right.
kick back in, and I'm going to want to get further and further into this, which is part of the reason why I said earlier I may have to think about which iPad I buy, right? And the good
Right.
news is I'll have another month of exposure to Vision Pro to think about this and to think about my budget. And do I want to spend $1,500 on a 12.9-inch iPad Air with a good keyboard and do that
Yeah.
stuff, and then get the X-Ro glasses, or I would want to go up to the $4,000 model. I would want a
Right.
spare battery
And the extra
for when
battery,
I'm in the
maybe a
trade,
couple of extra batteries. Yeah.
and I would want Apple Care Plus because it's $500, but it's $2,400 if you have to repair anything except for the front glass. Oh,
Yeah.
I mean, you're talking about $5,000 or $6,000 purchase. So, but the excitement is there, and I'll be curious to see how people use it and what iPad apps work really well in it, which ones don't, and
Yeah.
which actual Vision Pro original apps start to show up. So,
Right.
I did buy the Apple Watch on day one, even though I wasn't quite sure exactly what I was going to use it for. That was a
Hmm.
$500 purchase. So I think it'll be good to see over the next 2 or 3 months how this evolves and what people really say it's good at. I didn't watch the video, but one of the headlines was everybody's bringing up the same 9 concerns about the Vision Pro. I want to see what those 9 are, right? And see how
Right.
much that plays into, and then decide if I just want to go spend $300 for some X Reels so that I can have a monitor with me wherever I go. That may be the better approach. So
Right.
I'm excited about that. And that app store, like you brought up, right? Thousands of apps being able to go. The iPad apps, how well do they work? Which ones
Yeah.
are they? Who else? And I don't have a Netflix subscription, so I don't care. I know it's the big gorilla in streaming, but I don't care because I don't have a
Yeah.
Netflix subscription. So, um, yeah, we'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see. We'll see what this comes to.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, yeah, she hit me with there's thousands of apps, and I'm like, wow, this thing is ready to go. But as I thought about it, we saw the same with the iPad. Remember, there was really no
Yeah,
iPad apps; they were just blown up
there were
iPhone apps.
thousands or millions of iPhone
Right.
apps, like
Right.
the stupid Instagram app, which is the only way you can see Instagram on the iPad, which is absolutely
Yeah.
horrible. So the question is, are they going to act like that, right? Are these
Right.
iPad apps going to
Yeah.
be like
Not
those
be as
blown up
functional.
iPhone apps, which
Yeah.
at the time everybody thought, okay, well, that's fine. That works just fine. But then when you realize what the iPad could do, it was like, no, 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 no,
Yeah.
no, no. Those are horrible. So I rarely open Instagram on my iPad just because
Yeah.
the experience is just, and I'm only on a mini. So it's not like it's, you know, only a third of the screen. It takes up most of the mini
Right.
screen, but it's horrible. So
Yeah.
that's what I want to see. What is this experience like? And maybe some of these review videos will start to give us that picture.
Hmm.
I think by the time, end of March comes around with the iPads coming out, I think we'll have a much better idea of how usable it is. And we'll see, because like shipping right now is only on February 28th. You can get devices
Right.
on February 28th. And in some stores, you can still do in-store pickup first week.
Yeah.
So not
Yeah.
day one, but first week.
That
So,
first week. Yeah.
it's not a 6-month waiting list yet. So we'll have to keep our eye on it.
Yeah. Yeah. And what I like about these things, we know the Germans and the team over at your Bloombergs and Renee Ritchie and Marquez Brownlee, and they get their units. Some may be test units, some of them may be purchased. But I like when these guys that spend their own money get
Yeah.
get these devices, because they
Yep.
give the truth. They give you their actual opinions on it. Not saying that Gurman and all them do that, but you know if
Yeah.
there's something bad to say, they're not lying if they don't mention it. You get what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Like, I'm not saying that these guys, they just show Apple in a perfect light and everything, iJustine, and show everything Apple, everything's perfect. But when
Yeah.
these guys get it, that they spend their own hard-earned money for, they kind of give a more honest opinion. So I'm excited to see these guys get their hands on it.
I want to know if I spend $3,500 on it
Yeah,
or $5,000, which is probably what it would end up
yeah,
being, right?
it
If
would.
I spend $5,000, will it be worth it to me? And that's the question I'm
Yeah,
looking to answer, and I'm hoping to answer that over the next few months. So
yeah,
we'll see.
same here. Well, folks, thanks for listening. That's our deep dive. That's our post show. We're going to wrap that up for today. And again, no show next week. The week after, we'll have more information on the Vision Pro and a few other topics. And we'll see you guys then. So thanks for listening.
Yep. And don't forget to use the feedback and tell us how this recording turned
Yes.
out. So we'll talk about that in 2 weeks too. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.